afternoon to General G. Bakshi and to other eminent personalities that are here in attendance this afternoon, especially Air Marshal Anil Golani and Mr. Archesman Goswami, also our senior colleagues, regulars from the armed forces, most welcome. We are gathered here, as you all know, to basically hear General Bakshi in his inimitable style present the contents of his most recent book titled The Fifth India-Pakistan War, Operation Sindoor, an open source analysis. And I think this is a very timely piece of work. I can only marvel at the speed with which you have come out with a cogent book on something that is of extreme importance to India's national security. And I believe only you could have done that for your pen flows and your prolific in terms of both your pronouncements and your writings, which are very consequence to the studies community in India and overseas, those that want to also understand India's military and security doctrines and postures and actions. And so, on behalf of all of us, firstly, I congratulate you. And I also want to say that this book will help us understand what in those 4 days was more of a blur. And it was a kaleidoscopic sequence that did not leave the lay reader or the lay observer much time to absorb what was happening. But the armed forces were all in there. And Operation Sindoor has been declared to be an absolutely successful operation. It's still ongoing in a sense. And I think it achieved all its key objectives of destroying terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan and also questioning the fallacy of the nuclear threat or the nuclear overhang. For Operation Sindoor also proved that conventional action of this nature, very strong action could be taken notwithstanding the nuclear overhang. It also in a sense changed India's doctrine once and for all, for we have now made very clear that it is not just terrorists who will remain our target, but also their supporters and sympathizers, which to my mind also extends to the Pakistan state, not only the deep state, but also the Pakistan army, for they actually support terrorism. So this is the broad context in which Operation Sindoor took place. My role, apart from being here and watching these events with great interest, was also to be a privileged member of one of the all-party delegations that was sent out. And I went to West Asia and to West Africa. And the message that we conveyed was largely about India's determination not to tolerate Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. So these few words are once again, and over to you.
Thank you indeed. Thank you so much for those very kind and generous words of introduction. It is always a privilege to get back to the IDSA. I look back to my days with Air Commodore Jasjeet Singh with a lot of nostalgia, fondness. I was a young major when he was kind enough to let me write in the IDSA journal. And so our associations go back from there, and I'm extremely grateful to you, Mr. Chinoy, for the continued patronage and the opportunity to interact with such a hands-on group of scholars. So without much ado, let me get straight into it. Since I'm wearing a naval tie, in the Navy they have a tradition of what is called hot wash-up. Immediately after an operation, after an exercise is over, they get together, the officers, before memory fades, and write down the basic lessons learnt and try and take out the takeaways from that particular operation. The problem is, as you very rightly pointed out, that declassification in our country takes decades. not years, it takes decades. And by the time the official account comes out, I think it's pretty stale and it is not of much use to anyone except for passing promotion exams. There it does help, but nowhere else. So I thought it is better with the rate of, the pace of change in technology. The rate of change, pace of change is so astronomical, it's so mind-boggling that if you are a few months late, I think you are out of date. You are out of date and you have to keep up. You have to keep up. So lessons must be ingested right away because this operation, as you very rightly pointed out, is still on. The Prime Minister hasn't called it off. And it could easily graduate to Sindoor 2.0 anytime, depending upon what Asif Munir wants a further promotion or what, But therefore it was essential. Speed is of the essence in modern warfare, modern technology. So this is the book, of course, for those of you who haven't seen it as yet. I want to talk of Operation Sindoor. I want to, in this gathering of scholars, talk of what next. The more important issue is, and that's where we would like to pick the young minds around here. What next? What follows? You see? And let me at the outset say, as you pointed out to the battle of narratives, Pakistan claims it as a victory. It also claimed 1971 as a victory, the war that I and my batchmates were privileged to fight, right? It also claimed that as a victory, right? So I just want to start at the very outset. I want to flash what objective military observers have said of this conflict. And here we have Colonel John Spencer, urban warfare expert, West Point. India achieved a massive victory, demonstrated military superiority, restored deterrence, unveiled the new national security doctrine. Then the second is the most important. This is source is anonymous, but in the third nuclear age, the efficiency of nuclear systems is in question against a modern high-tech air defense environment. If there is one major takeaway from Operation Sindoor, it is the efficacy of modern air defenses against anything that the enemy can throw, including nuclear weapons. You can jam him in situ and make sure even a moderately armed nuclear weapons power may not, if your Iron Dome works well, be able to penetrate and get through. You can negate his nuclear arsenal. I'll dwell a little more, try and develop this theme subsequently. Then there is Tom Cooper. He is the Austrian expert on military aviation and one of the most respected, air power enthusiasts, etc. So he says the number of aircraft lost is immaterial. What is important is India was able to define its objectives and hit them precisely with precision. After 10th of May, Pakistan had no power left to retaliate. We had gained total air superiority and could range anywhere over the skies in Pakistan. No mean achievement. When I was on television and, I was asked, what is your view on the ceasefire? I had responded with Vikram Batra's famous quote, "Ye dil mange more." You see? So that we will discuss. John Spencer again, he says most nations start wars and do not know how to end them. They have no exit strategy and get bogged down in forever wars, never ending conflicts. So in such an era, he says, Op Sindoor stands apart. It offers a model of limited war with clearly defined ends, matched ways and means, and a state that never relinquished the initiative. In an age where many modern wars spiral into open-ended occupation or political confusion, Op Sindoor stands apart. This is an urban warfare expert from the United States, and he has been through what the open-ended war that he's talking about. And then Walter Ludwig of the Royal United Services Institution, he says the IAF could strike targets under defended conditions and undertake follow-on attacks, demonstrate its capacity for coercive precision operations. India appears to have signaled the revised threshold for response, one that regional actors will have to factor into future risk assessments. So with that, let me get on to the presentation per se. Look, in 1971, ladies and gentlemen, India faced a very dangerous security situation. We lived through that, and actually Sindoor opened a lot of memories. It was like deja vu, right? India then acted in a very proactive manner, despite the United States and Chinese support. In 13 days, we had broken Pakistan in two. The 7th Fleet be damned, right? The 7th Fleet be damned. And this was 13 days of intense tri-service combat. It was a quasi-total war, quasi-total, not limited, quasi-total war with decisive outcomes. Now the key question today is, with recent intervention, especially American intervention on or in our periphery, our security restructuring of South Asia that we carried out in 1971 will have to be redone. You can't get away from it. We are facing greater danger than we faced in 1971. From a 2.5 front scenario, we are on a 3.5 front war situation. There's China to the north, there's Pakistan to the west, and there is that upstart Bangladesh to the east, right? And of course, we have the internal security front. So there is a dire need today to act proactively and repeat 1971 despite a nuclear overhang, right? That is the key issue at stake. The strategic dilemma that we face today in 2025, which T2 and Sultan, who are with me here, did not face in 1971, was that nuclear threshold, that nuclear backdrop. Has Operation Sindoor shown us a way to negate the Pakistani nuclear threat by conventional military means? And if so, what are the immediate lessons that we need to learn from Op Sindoor to decide what kind of a limited war we will have to fight in Operation Sindoor 2.0, that, as you very rightly pointed out, sir, leads to decisive outcomes. We are done with messaging, right? 2019, Uri, we did the surgical strike. 4 battalions of special forces, 3 to 4 kilometers inside, 40 terrorists killed. Unfortunately, the targets we chose were in the dense jungle. And Pakistan could get away by saying, kuch nahi hua. Jungle mein mor nacha, kisi ne na dekha. 2019, we hit Balakot. Unfortunately, this time we killed about 200 of their terrorists. Once again, we had that syndrome. It was a remote location, no media, no civilian population to watch. He said, Kauwe mare, chidiya mare. So this time, we have hit him in open sight. That is Markaze Subhanallah, Bawalpur, 110 kilometers inside, middle of the town. We'll see, don't tell us, show us. So we'll show you those, right? So we have to now decide Operation Sindoor 2.0. What and how should we go about it, right? 1.0 is still not over. And there are parallels. If I might just digress a little. In March, end of March 1971, Madame Indira Gandhi, our Prime Minister then, and an iron lady, no doubt about it, she had called Sam Manekshaw and told him, Sam, I want you to move in. If I recall that conversation correctly, he said, Madam, that means war. And Madam had said, I don't care. मैं कर भी क्या सकती हूँ? 10 million refugees, I can't afford it for more than a few months, right? So he said, but Madam, I'm not ready. And you know, she was an autocrat par excellence. Her eyebrows shot up. You know, what the hell do you mean? She asked the minister, "आप लोग जाएं." You remember that story? "आप लोग जाएं." So they all got up to go, and Sam also quietly got up to go. He said, no, Sam, sit down. He said, what the hell do you mean you can't do it? He says, Madam, if you want my resignation, please tell me whether I should put it on mental grounds or physical grounds, right? But my point is, this is end of March. April, the monsoon start in Bangladesh. The place will be a bloody quagmire. My tanks, my trucks, my guns will all bog down. Because of the cloud cover, the Air Force will not be able to give me support. And once I still fight through all that mud and major mud and winters, the monsoon, right? At the end of that fighting, you know, the passes will open in the Himalayas and the Chinese could come in. He said, Madam, please let me go in the month of November, December, and I guarantee you 100% victory. You order me to go in now, I will go in, but I can't guarantee you the outcome. Madam gave it a thought, just a minute she took, and you know, you granted to her. She wasn't egoistic about it or this or that. He said, okay, Sam, do it your way. And he delivered. Right? So this started in May. The campaign season in this subcontinent comes in November, December. We are heading for a strong winter, early winter. Winter means passes are closed, and even if somebody from the north wants to interfere, he can't. Frankly, I would suggest that I'm looking forward for a redux, 1971 redux. More of that a little later. What's a limited war? You know, we are talking of limited war, how limited it should be, right? And this is where my PhD thesis was on limited wars in South Asia against a nuclear backdrop. And luckily I was the first officer from the NDC to get my PhD from there, from the University of Madras. So a limited war entails limitation in space / area of coverage, limitations in time, duration of a conflict. The only limitation we had in 71 was do it quick. Our Russian friend, our Soviet friend were telling us, jaldi karo, we can't hold the UNSC off your backs for much longer. Then there is limitation in aim, objective, scope, and limitations in weapon usage. This was an Air Force centric war, drone centric war. The Air Force has delivered. I frankly think we should look for a Marshal of the Air Force, another one. Frankly, I think they've done a marvelous job, and kudos to our Air Force colleagues. You made us proud. You made us proud. The prime limitation, however, is non-use of nuclear weapons. And this is the key characteristics of modern limited wars, right? And like I said, Air Force was the preferred option this time. Why? Air Force aircraft can fly across national borders, geographical obstacles, hit targets deep inside enemy territory. Highly calibrated escalation as well as disengagement control is possible with the use of air power. Air power would be the prime asset in a limited war. All our limited wars will have to be air power led. The opening rounds will be from there. All that cold start doctrine, put it in the trash can. And the faster you do, the better it will be. And we did that, and we have, had terrific gains. You see, once armies get it, you can't disentangle armies. Once they are in collision mode, you can't call them back. You need disaster to start staging a withdrawal in the midst of an attack. So the army is definitely not the instrument for a limited war to start with. Once the Air Force has gotten us air superiority, then the Army and the Navy can go in to exploit the air dominance that they have gained. That is exactly how it had happened in 71. We had not only gained air superiority, we had gained air supremacy over the skies in Bangladesh. More of that later. And this is the best part of it, which has been borne out. This is from my thesis actually. Calibrated air strikes could generally extract only air power responses. You see, when you go air centric, he is forced to follow suit, and he did. You are able to impose how he will fight onto the enemies. We didn't mobilize. Actually, all of us veterans were sweating because Pakistan has a mobilization differential advantage. He can mobilize in a week, we take 2 weeks, right? And when we hadn't mobilized, we started asking some of our friends, "Yaar, ho kya raha hai?" If you haven't mobilized and he has, then you could ask for trouble. But they took that risk, they went air power centric, and the beauty is that Pakistan was relieved. It's not all, the army also coming in, etc. And therefore they restricted their responses to air power and drones, primarily drones. Superiority in the air would be key to generating options in a limited war. This, of course, is our lineup. This is a very interesting stability-instability paradox, Chris Gardner. The problem in the subcontinent has been what? If you've got a warfare spectrum, you have the nuclear at this end, you have conventional in the center and sub-conventional at the other end. Our problem is that ever since Pakistan went nuclear, they are convinced we've got you exactly where we want. We will now escalate at the sub-conventional level and you won't be able to do a damn. Unfortunately, for some time the Indian political establishment, the civilian establishment, with due apologies, was so overawed with the power that they had acquired. And American think tanks and American, State Department people told them, how can two nuclear armed countries ever think of going for a war? Have you seen one instance, can you give us, where, there was a direct clash on conventional kinetic clash between two nuclear armed powers? Yes, there was. Yes, there was. Amur Asuri, 1969. There was. And actually, even the Korean War was, America had nukes, America was fighting, Russia was backing China, and it was against a nuclear backdrop. Even Vietnam, Russia had nuclear weapons, China had nuclear weapons, and yet that war was fought. I'll come to that a little later because there is a catch to it. You see, so for almost 3 to 4 decades, Pakistan has ruled the roost. They have escalated at the sub-conventional level of hybrid war. They started with Punjab, where we had 21,000 casualties. Then in J&K, Topak Amru, or Tariq Anwar, as it was called, 45,000 casualties all told. And then the Indian Mujahideen in every single city, 15,000 casualties. 81,000 Indians have perished because of this proxy war. And your response was grin and bear it to begin with. Grin and bear it. What did you do? Tom Cooper asked a very pertinent question. Which country has its parliament attacked and does nothing? The answer, hum log. Which country suffers 26/11 and does nothing? And before 26/11, there were the train blasts for which the accused have been released, right, by our courts. But the fact of the matter is we had 200 people killed and we had done nothing. So, this do nothing. And if you go through Jaswant Singh's biography, I have quoted him in the book, he said it is very difficult to tell the armed forces that doing nothing is also a strategy. Sir, it is a strategy, but it sort of gives the impression to the world that you don't care how many Indians die. And the welcome change came with this government, 2014, and they have also probed timorously. 2019 surgical strike, messaging. It was strategic messaging. Single service. Only one service was involved. And this Lone Ranger syndrome has come up since then. Let one service do it. So, 2019 it was the Air Force at Balakot and nobody else. Why nobody else? You got a spectrum of power. It has been used for the first time now. Like in Kargil. The Navy was deployed, if not employed. The Air Force was employed. The Army was employed. And you shook them up. Right? So, we had to get out of this stability-instability paradox of Chris Gardner. And of course, we can discuss it in the question and answer. This is the one man responsible for this so-called war. He wants Sid a promotion. He still wants one. The question is whether he'll get 2 years or 5 years. There was a conference in Murray, I think yesterday, a few days back, when Nawaz Sharif, Shehbaz Sharif and all got together to decide what to do with him. They would like him out. Because the president of the Pakistan, the prime minister, hasn't been invited to the White House. This man has had one lunch and another, with the Central Command chief, buddy, very, very lovey-dovey, etc. You see, and he had opened his presidential campaign on 16th of April. What did he do on 16th of April? He called the Parvasi Pakistanis, and he harangued them on the economic and Riyasat-e Madina 2.0 and Huntington-esque, India-Pakistan war of civilizations. We are different. I dislike the tone in which he said different. But then he meant it. And this is what followed. 27, one Nepalese, but they are our brothers, got killed after being asked their religion. And it was, on a very personal note, it was my wedding anniversary. So we were with my children and grandchildren deciding where to go. And suddenly we saw the television screen and our girls' wheels. And I don't know, as a father-in-law, it breaks something inside you to see your girls cry. And we had to hit back. The Prime Minister, as we all know, came and we decided to adopt a whole of the government approach. Thank God. No lone wolf. The intelligence agencies will do it. Leave it to us. The Air Force will do it. Leave it to us. The Special Forces will do it. You have power, use it, man. We have tremendous power. And for the first time which has been applied, we've done that ages back, we wouldn't have had this problem by now. So we decided to put diplomatic pressure, Indus Warfare Treaty in abeyance and kinetic military pressure. The phases of operations were very clear. Phase 1, we attacked the terrorist infrastructure on the 7th of May, hit 9 major terror camps, 5 in POK, 4 in the Punjab heartland. The jungle mein Mor Nacha syndrome was taken very good care of by the Air Force. Right? Phase 2, Pakistan retaliate with drones, attempts attacks on Indian air bases on 8th and the 9th of May. Drones as well as their aircraft came up to try and fire their cruise missiles. It is the S-400s that disabuse them of any notion of attacking Indian airspace or Indian air bases. And in the 4th and the final phase, out of 12 major air bases, we hit 11 on the 10th of May, and specifically we went for their command and control nodes at Noor Khan, and the drone command and control node at Murid were destroyed. I shall go cover that in more detail. We all know this. These are the terror targets that we were supposed to hit, and this is, don't tell us, show us. That's what the Americans say. So, आप देख लीजिए, कौए गिन लीजिए, कुत्ते बिल्ली जितने मरे हैं गिन लीजिए. 140 terrorists have been killed, including 6 high-value targets. And Masood Azhar, his family is being knocked out. Elder brother, younger brother, Ustad ji, etc. His sister and her husband and a whole lot of them. And he was heard crying and weeping. Allah ne mujhko bhi utha liya hota. Aapki tamanna puri kar denge agli baar. And there is also Asim Munir. He was asked what does he want. He said Shahadat after hiding in the Maryam bunker and getting a Hilale Jurrat. Have you heard a greater joke? Hilale Jurrat, for my friends who may not know, Hilale Jurrat is equivalent to a Mahavir Chakra. Ask my colleagues here and those colleagues who have ever worn a uniform, you would feel humiliated if a chief of your service was given the Mahavir Chakra for hiding in a Mariam bunker in Pakistan. But this man has given it, I mean, he is unfazed. And I don't know what the Pakistani military thinks about it. I would for one feel humiliated if one of our service chiefs was to be given a Mahavir Chakra. Leave it for the captains, majors, colonels. They are the guys who are supposed to earn this. So here is your Bhavalpur headquarters. You can see the destruction. There is the Markaz-e-Toiba. You can see the ruin. Gin lijiye. Kauwe billi maar lijiye. Now comes the battle of narratives, on which I would request Archisman to give us, of course, the view when he comes later. But this is Aurangzeb. He's got 500 hours of flying, if I am not mistaken. He's just got 500 bloody hours of flying. And a good, I'm sure the Air Marshal has about 5,000 plus, if I am not mistaken. 500 hours of flying, and he wants to play Tom Cruise. He gave us this yarn about, how a major ambush had been launched and 6 Indian aircraft had been shot down. Show us the evidence. Show us the evidence. Show us the radar tracks. Dasi does that, etc. and all that. I mean, it was a cock and bull story. I shall deal with it a little later. What happened was, maybe at the best, my colleague would be better able to comment, at the best, when you discuss with some of your service, veterans, at best, maybe 2 aircraft we may have lost on that particular day. Why did that happen? Some people are suggesting they had the J-10Cs, they had the JF-17 Thunders. Out of them, 140 odd, only about 40 can carry the BVR missiles, right? And this is the BVR missile. We were under the impression, correct me if I am wrong on this, because this is where I look for your views, that they had the PL-15E. E is the export version. But we are told that on the last 2 days before the conflict, 4 Chinese aircraft had landed and given them the PL-15 main one with 200 to 300 kilometers range. And possibly on the 7th, some of our aircraft which were firing from standoff distances were basing it on the PL-15E, and maybe 2 of them were surprised. Maybe 2. With a so what, man? I mean, this is a war. And in war, planes get lost. Planes get lost. So what? What's the song and dance about? In the question and answers, I'll tell you about this famous air ambush story, but I'll leave it for the Q&A. Pakistan hits back with 400 drones, 300 to 400 drone strike on our air bases. This is primarily a probing attack, to test make us open up our air defense frequencies, radar frequencies, and so that you can do that. They were shot out of the skies. You can see that Baikar Shiva and the Barkatiyars been a disaster. The Turks have proved to be a disaster. The wing looms were even worse. Most of them were horse combat. They were hit in the hangars. They have problems with their synthetic aperture radars. They have a hell of a lot of problems. They are unserviceable, most of them, right? Most of the countries have done away with guns and gone to missiles. India is one of the few countries which has stuck on with the Zu-23, the L-70, Igla and the Shilkas, right? And these were upgraded, integrated with our Akash Tir, the lead air defense, and because of that, we've been able to shoot down 90% of the 1,200 drones that were launched. You have done as good, if not better, than the Israeli Iron Dome. Iron Dome is just one part of it, you see. And then we hit back we did our SEAD with the Harops. Harops are the ones that are homing onto radars. Radar homing kamikaze drone. 7 of their radars were blasted, 2 of their HQ-9 batteries were destroyed, and Pakistan was shook up and made ready for the coup de grace that came on the 10th with our airstrikes on the bases as shown. And I'll just speed it up. Noor Khan, why are the Americans so angry? Why is Donald Trump so upset with you? Tariffs? Be damned. We'd almost gotten an agreement. They are upset because the General Electric Company of the United States, sir, spent $500 million building this command post, where you have computer servers, you had the satellite communications, and 7 years after we thought they had left Afghanistan, they were still hanging around using this base. And then this base was taken over by the Americans post the strike, and they were trying to take out some very classified equipment. Some people are speculating it was their nukes. This is a 40 by 40 meter command post, exactly the same structure as the one they have in Israel and the one they have in Turkey, which is to control nuclear launches. They had their set of nuclear weapons in Pakistan, which they could use from an unexpected direction against Russia, against China, right? And this is where kudos to our Air Force, kudos to the Navik satellites. You know, this has 5 meter ka chadar hai saab, cement, concrete, steel, etc. on top. A direct nuclear hit couldn't have knocked it out. A direct nuclear hit couldn't have knocked it out. And how did we knock it out? There was an air vent, 45 centimeter by 45 centimeter duct for air conditioning, right? The BrahMos cruise missiles hit it from almost 300 to 400 kilometers inside that vent and exploded inside. If you see the explosion, तो नीचे से वो ऊपर उठा है, ऊपर से नीचे collapse नहीं हुआ, नीचे से ऊपर उठा है, खलास. And this happened to be their nuclear command post. There's a direct private road linking it to their, their strategic plans division. And this is around where their top people's bunkers were. We hit Burin Air Base, and that's what has happened to it. You can see the 3 meter wide hole which the Rafales inflicted with their Storm Shadow oblique, I think we are calling it some other name. Their drones started flying out of the skies. Turkey के लोग मारे गए हैं साहब यहाँ. And some Americans, there have been American casualties. Period. If the orangutan is angry, it is because for very good reason, right? And this is Sargodha Air Base, where they have the cross. They were able to make a 80-foot bloody hole. The Rahim Yar Khan Air Base, if I remember correctly, is still not ops, is still non-ops, right? And then of course this is the Bolari Air Base. The left shows before the attack and the right shows after the attack, right? And there were there was the AVAC here. Our satellites had picked up the AVAC landing. The moment it taxied in, we hit. AVAC gone. 40 people who were trying to download data gone. There were 4 or more F-16 inside, gone on the ground. Jacobabad, there were 8 to 12 in the hangar that we hit. I don't think they would have survived. You are talking of 6. Chalo, if we give the Pakistanis the maximum 6 aircraft, chalo, give it for a minute. You lost about, the estimates vary between 40 to 10, right? And I think the figure is about 19 to 20. I would request my Air Force colleague to enlighten us on that. And of course, this is the BrahMos cruise missile. Sir, we hit the nuclear storage site at Kiran. It was denied by Air Marshal Tiwari, and quite obviously, it has to be denied. You won't admit to it. But these are photographs, and the satellite photographs have also come in now. So why did we hit there are electrical motors which open those steel doors. You hit it, जो भी आपके bombs हैं वो अंदर lock हो गए. खोल लो निकाल लो. You see when you can. So they only answer was the Fateh 2s and the Shaheen 2s. They fired 3. One Shaheen at Delhi, one Fateh 2 at Delhi, one Fateh 2 at Amritsar. All 3 shot down. In percentile, it comes to 100%, interception rate. This is the magic. The Navik series of satellites, we got about 12. It will go up to 52. This covers the imprint of about 3,000 kilometers all around India. So therefore, the GPS covers the whole globe. GLONASS covers the whole globe. And even the Chinese Bidyao covers the whole globe. There is distortion. Iska footprint small hai, there is no distortion. It has given you sub-meter level accuracy, 45 centimeters of accuracy, which only this can give, and only we have the frequencies. GPS frequencies सबके पास इसमें नहीं है. And then of course the layered air defense S-400, Barak, MR SAMs, Akash has done fantastically well. In single salvos, 90% hit probability, multiple salvos, 98% hit probability, right? And of course the spiders. And then of course on the line of control we had the ATAGs, the Smirch, the Pinakas and the Bofors. ATAGs hadn't come in, but the Smirch, Pinaka, Bofors fired to terrific effect. And the biggest advantage we have, this is for the next round, the biggest advantage if any service has over the Pakistani counterpart is the Navy, right? And we postured it, but don't forget that in 71, the Indian Navy had hit Karachi twice, sunk ships, 6 Pakistani ships in the harbour and put that oil farm on fire. It burned for a week.
Operation Trident and Operation Python.
Python and Trident. You see, the 4th of December is still celebrated as Navy Day, and 8th they hit it again. They hit it again. So the Navy can do one hell of a lot. And there were just 8 Pakistani submarines, only 2 were operational. So they didn't even get into Karachi. They switched off their radar transponders and went to ग्वादर पोर्ट इन बलूचिस्तान. वहां जाके छुपे. एक तुर्किश कॉर्वेट आई थी, रेडार ट्रांसपॉन्डर ऑफ करके भागी. You see, the Navy should have been unleashed. They should have hit Dawood Ibrahim's palatial bungalow in Karachi. It would have been good, but I'm sure they will catch up. What is Pakistan's stamina to wage a war? At the start of this conflict, 7 to 10 days worth of ammunition they had, out of which about $320 million worth they had to sell to Ukraine under American pressure, right? Their aviation turbine fuel is 5 days, right? And surge capacity kuch nahi hai for anything, and they were down to $10 billion reserve. That means third day, second day onwards, they would have started crying to the United States, which they did. And I'll just conclude by saying one thing: limited war. When we talk of limited war, the Chinese also talk of limited war. But their limited war is that in Korea, they threw in 1 million men across the Yalu. In Vietnam, they threw in 25 divisions or 3 lakh troops. You see, they learned quite a few lessons themselves. But there has been nothing on that border after that. Right? And Taiwan, they are planning to throw in 300,000 in the first wave. This is against a nuclear backdrop, mind you. So if they can think of this, why can't we think of the same? I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Bakshis, for that very enlightening and I must say passionate talk. As usual, you gave us some robust options also. This is something truly inspiring to hear you. We've all seen these details, we've heard about these details, but you've done this presentation in your own matchless, inimitable style. So it brings the whole Operation Sindoor alive to us as well, and I'm sure all of us have benefited from your presentation. It sets us thinking about many more aspects of the war that you touched upon. Thoughtful remarks, and I'm glad that you also added a note of caution. For that will only help Bakshi to fine-tune his own writings further. I think the value of the book lies not so much in purporting to be an unchallenged history, an operational blow-by-blow account of what unfolded during Operation Sindoor, but its value lies in sparking off a new kind of thinking on various aspects raised in the book. So I think that adds to the value of the discourse. And I'm glad you mentioned Kargil also. I mean, the Air Force was greatly utilized during the Kargil war, but at first reluctantly so. And there too, there was the added discovery of vulnerabilities very quickly upon deployment, and we did lose a few platforms before. The Mirage 2000 was also mounted with additional pods and standoff weapons. of its era were mounted such that they were beyond range of shoulder-fired missiles and things like that. So there was a learning curve there as well. At first, reluctance, and then wholeheartedly using the Air Force's awesome capabilities. This time, I would say that the IAF was, unleashed, so to speak, on the adversary at the very word go, and it proved itself 100%. But we cannot rest on our laurels. And I'm glad you also raised this bit about the BOK and things like that, because we must study our abilities and the adversary's abilities and the consequences also. I'm not saying we cannot and should not. After all, we show the whole of BOK is part of India's map, and therefore territory that we claim must always remain on the front burner. But there are implications which can be the subject of your second talk. Thank you very much for raising some very relevant issues to do with technology and information warfare. But as far as the classification of, say, operational Sindoor is concerned, I'm not entirely sure if it would serve a very beneficial purpose. Because it is also an opportunity for adversaries to immediately and conclusively map you out, and your vulnerabilities and capabilities can be judged by the extent to which you reveal your classified information of that nature. So there's something for experts to ponder about and take a view. I do concede your broader point that communication strategy has to be extremely effective, especially during conflict situations. But I'm not entirely sure if the messaging this fact was internal versus external as much as it was political messaging, whether external or internal. And to that extent, you might have noticed that the Foreign Secretary also made a fairly impressive statement in Hindi. And one would have noticed that if you were truly addressing an external audience, you would not have been speaking in chaste Hindi at that point of time. So there is, of course, no gainsaying the fact that there should be a proper structure which gets the best out of all the stakeholders in terms of communication. And we saw some of that during Kargil when then Colonel Vikram Singh was doing some of the briefings. Some of us were serving at headquarters at that time. And I, for one, was dealing with China, and one saw some difficulties on that flank as well. But you raised some very important questions, and I thank you for your enlightening remarks as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes left for us to interact. And thank you for organizing this.
GD Bakshis, sir, what could be the possible objectives of Sindoor?
What are the strengths of the Pakistan ground forces and the air force, which probably got less noticed, and how will it impact the future air and ground operations, especially integration? While we have spoken about integration, integration of CAPS, Coast Guard, have they been covered, or it will be an area to work?
My question is to General Bakshi and Mr. Goswami. You had mentioned that in a limited war, we tend to limit the number of arsenal that we are also deploying in limited weaponry use, right, in your visitation. And you have mentioned that we tend to sort of treat unconventional tactics with the unconventional tactics in silos. So my question is, in this particular context that we had in Operation Sindoor, when we had very clear limited objectives, how would you have recommended the conventional and unconventional objectives to have come together in all units?
All right. The first, and I thought a very pointed question of what should be the objectives of Operation Sindoor 2.0. I said I have a feeling of deja vu. In 1971, Victor Hugo, there's a very nice statement by him No army can withstand the strength of an idea whose time has come. In 1971, the time for the birth of Bangladesh had come. In 2025, has the time for the birth of Balochistan come? And what are you going to do to get it about? We will have to, like pitch our objectives higher. कि हमने उसने थप्पड़ मारा, हमने थप्पड़ मार दिया वापस, and we have taught you a lesson. He says, no, I haven't learned the lesson. So it will have to be something far more decisive. One would be, is the outcome in Balochistan, right? Are you prepared to intervene and midwife the birth of the People's Republic of Balochistan? Number one. What about, I'm not so much interested in POK. That is a negotiating tactic to, turn the heat away from so-called Indian occupied Kashmir back to when are you giving us POK? That is a negotiating tactic. Gilgit-Baltistan is something that you need to grab hold of to cut the link between China and Pakistan. In the next war, I would suggest that I would anticipate or reckon it would start with air power, drone power centric, and as it is, we have done a lot of damage, right? We should be quickly recapitulating on that damage. SEAD total, cratering of runways and airfields total. Even if our air defense is not able to take care of every single nuke. Offensively, he has got only two vectors of delivery: fighter bombers and missiles. 5 missile bases and we know the 4 or 5, air bases from where the fighter bombers modified for toss bombing of nukes can take off. Most of them were hit in this time, but like we had done in Tejgaon, 71, 40 crater, right? अभी तो एक 2 crater किया है, उसको भी अभी तक the Rahim Yar Khan airfield is still non-ops, right?
Just to interrupt you here,
Sir.
To stimulate response. So I would also take into account the possibility of Pakistan seriously using tactical nuclear.
Yeah.
And if their existence is threatened, what is the threshold that Pakistan considers as absolute deadline before they use tactical nuclear weapons, because you refer to Balochistan. These things come into the picture.
Yes.
Are there artillery shells that could also deliver some tactical nukes, not just aircraft and missiles? And what kind of Sudarshan, Chakra will we have in case to absolutely negate foolproof? That not a single mosquito will just the mosquito net.
Right,
I guess that's a reach 50 meters away. It's one more.
Very important question, Professor. My take is very simple. What I am trying to say is that when we had enunciated the Cold Start doctrine, that was the time that Pakistan had done a lot of head scratching to come out with an answer, and they had come out with the answer of using sub-tactical or tactical nuclear weapons, right? Sub-kiloton range. So to stop the tank columns from getting in. Now, number one, even if it comes to the disaster scenario of him using it, right? The simple point is a mechanized column is NBC protected unless and they go linear. When you draw that CEP of that circular, this place, 1 or 2 tanks would go. The columns would keep proceeding, even in the worst case scenario. But what we are saying is that I see a glimmer of hope. Why are the Israelis investing so much in the Iron Dome? And Iron Dome is just the tactical component of it. The layered air defenses, 97 to 98% interception rates with Iranian drones, Iranian missiles. But you are very right. Even if one gets through, it is a disaster. You see, in the mosquito net, even if one gets through,
So, but then you are already at the escalation line.
then you already reached the nuclear threshold, which is something that we don't want to cross. What I am trying to say is, and this is what Operation Sindoor tells you. There is a glimmer of hope. It is not just a defensive shield. It is the offensive capability. If he can't mate his nuclear warhead, sir, with the missiles or with the fighter bombers, what nukes? What nukes? You see, if you hit, we just demonstrated the hit on Kirana, which was denied, but satellites have then shown us that it was so hit, right? If you put three BrahMos down the Kirana entrance, right? You could set off radioactive contamination. It won't explode the bomb. It will cause a cook-off, right? And a radiological cook-off means for the next 200 years, nobody can enter those and pull any single nuke out of there. You see, there is a glimmer of hope. It is high risk, extremely high risk, but even the Prime Minister has alluded that the next time we are not going to be deterred by your nukes. आप भूल जाइए. So far we were deterred and we self-deterred ourselves almost into importance in the previous government eras. But the fact of the matter is you now have a critical hope. Why is America investing in Golden Dome? You see, the whole world is seen. I may not be able to stop a Russian attack. I may not be able to stop a Chinese attack. But a North Korean attack, an Iranian attack, yes. Moderate nuclear arsenals है. पाकिस्तान का आर्सेनल कितना बड़ा है था और उसमें भी जो आर्सेनल भी जो है उसमें most of them are sub-kiloton nukes who dared bomb with who became bombs. If I can prevent the mating, they are debated. If I can prevent the mating, where is the nuke? If I can crater the runways with 40 craters, कहाँ से उड़ेगा? To drop the bomb. He doesn't have a triad. He has no nuclear submarine, no triad capability. You can stymie this and go for the juggler. Go for the juggler. Think big. My entire advocacy is please think big.
Mr. Chiron, may I just interject here? We have the strategic communications. We have the ADGPI.
What we noticed as veterans war, first 2-3 days they were missing from action. You see, there is a Union War book which lays down who will do what. And as you very rightly observed, during the Kargil War, 3 months, every day, the reps of DGMO, Air Ops, Naval Ops used to come and brief. Vikram, my very dear friend, we put together in the MO then, they used to go and brief every day. And our strategic communications were working very well. Here we found, and that when the kinetic action started, it was the Ministry of External Affairs which was continuing the briefings on a day-to-day basis. Now, I have the greatest of respect for Rishi Saab. I mean, he's a erudite scholar and all that, but he's not an air warfare expert. Now, we were giving far more emphasis on political signaling. एक कुरैशी मैडम बैठी है बेचारी, एक वो हमारी एयरफोर्स की वेरोनिका बैठी है, and they are lifting up बड़े से प्लेकार्ड जिसपे कि ये जो मैंने दिखाई है मैक्सा फोटो वो है. It was pathetic. I mean, let me be quite candid. We were worrying, हो क्या रहा है? Where the hell is ADGPI gone? Because he's been put to one side. And when we raised the issue on the media, we were told it is for civilian supremacy. I said, for heaven's sake, the Ministry of Defense is very civilian. But let them do their job. The Union War book tells you who has to do what. So, till the kinetic shooting starts, it should be happen. Now, problem ये हो गई. First 4-5 days, as he also pointed out, the narrative went totally to Aurangzeb Saab and his very strict use of jargon, NATO jargon, multi-domain operation, center of gravity करके he impressed the female journalists there, वो तो ठीक है, but he carried the day. Every single foreign media channel was focusing on हमारे 6 आज गए, massive air victory of Pakistan. What nonsense? What happened to you on day 2, day 3, day 4? How is it that we could hit every single airbase? You could scratch an airbase here. You see? But they carried the narrative. So it is important to win your battles on the ground, air, sea. But if you lose the battle of the narrative,
I'm afraid all that investment is gone for waste. I was asking the ADG, मैं तू किधर है भाई, तू कर क्या रहा है? इधर सब मेरे को हुक्म नहीं, मैं चुप बैठा हूँ, जब तक मेरे को हुक्म नहीं आएंगे मैं नहीं बोलूँगा. So you can have the strategic, under a deputy chief of the army staff, etc. But and there are unfortunate blackouts. We noticed it in 2019. At the critical time, nobody speaks. ना MOD बोल रही है, ना एयर हेडक्वार्टर बोल रहा है, ना आर्मी हेडक्वार्टर बोल रहा है. There is an 8 hours gap. You can't afford that. In the battle of the narrative, if you haven't got your narrative out there first, you lost the battle before it started. You may have won it on the ground, you may have won it on the air, but you lost the battle of the narrative. That is, I think, the problem.
Thank you very much. I think on that note, we have actually run out of time completely. But I think we must prepare for the hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And once again, always congratulations, Bakshi. And I want to take this opportunity to thank both of you, Marshal Gulani and Mr. Goswami. Thank you for your support. You're most welcome to visit us again. But once again, thank you very much. Almost.